But today, of course, is President's Day. It is, it was President's Day was sort of born out of George Washington's birthday originally. And I think remarkably, when if you said to me out of the blue, what are you doing for President's Day? It's not a holiday that I make plans for. People, you make a long weekend out of it. Uh, That wasn't what I was thinking about. In fact, because I was just trying to get back to feeling human, I wasn't even focused on it much at all. But I was reading very early this morning, and it made me think that on one hand, the fact on the calendar, the reality of the federal observance of a President's Day doesn't make me, of course, want to celebrate Donald J. Trump. Right? He is the country's president. He's not mine as far as I'm concerned. But he is an elected president of the United States. So enjoy whatever portion of that day. But I like to think back to start with George because that's where it all started. And we have these fantastical visions of what George was based on the passage of time and myth and stories and just uh, the magnificence of him, in the front of a boat, Valley Forge and crossing the river Jersey, and all of the things that we associate with him. And the one overriding quality that I think about the first thing that comes to mind when I think of George Washington is humility, right? Which is the most important quality for a president to have, I would argue. Yeah, bravery, sure. You got to be brave. You got to be tough. You have to be brash. And some people, Trump is he's a businessman. He's aggressive. He's unpredictable. Yeah. No, he's also he behaves like an asshole. So that's kind of on the negative side of the whole equation. But our friend George, right, he had, as the expression goes, he had to begin with, he had a lot to be humble about. He came from, not impoverished circumstances, certainly, but because of the family dynamics, the older half brothers went and got the classic education in England that, people of a certain status level where it's almost a sense of entitlement. That was the way things were done because of course that was still the king's colony, and but George had to stay closer to home and work, and then he, through the military, he was sort of when you think of the military commercials that or symbolism or advertisements that embody the best of what the U.S. military can be. The current recruiting videos and things and the posters we see now for ICE and for border security, of course, are rife with white supremacist. We've talked about this before. Lingo and slogans and signs and gang signs of Nazi gang signs, right? HH, hey Hitler, or something close to that. But this was, the iconic George Washington was the stunning apparition of manhood, the brave, but as we learned, very humble man that knew his limitations. And also, as the country was coming together and he saw himself as the first leader of the nation, he was the one that decided two terms it out, right? He could have been, Trump, if not age wasn't limiting him. He'd like to serve as a dictator does for an extended period of time. And there was something in George Washington's character that was completely antithetical to that because they learned from actual sovereigns, actual royalty, how damaging that can be. And Trump is reaching back in the Wayback Machine. Mr. Peabody and whatever his name was, that he wants. So I mean, Trump would like it to be perhaps the late 19th century. And he could be his own, robber baron, and that life would be fine like that. You didn't really have to give women or people of color any consideration whatsoever. White guys make all the decisions. They get all the money. They get all the opportunity, and they get to, you know, uh, grab women wherever they want, wherever they feel like grabbing them, and shoot somebody in the middle of Fifth Avenue without any repercussions. That's that is DJT's sort of fever dream scenario, and because of the John Roberts court giving him that, the Trump United States decision, which was one of the greatest, um, most grave mistakes in Supreme Court jurisprudence entire show, right? Just absolutely horrible in its by the letter of it, but also the message that it's in, and you can see in Donald Trump's behavior, the message is everything because he believes that he can operate with complete impunity, which is not what it says exactly, but until somebody stops him, and that would require the Supreme Court or John Thune to behave like adults, and they've shown no compunction to do that throughout 2.0. So, excuse me. So we got George and somebody the perfect first guy because self doubt in the field of on the field of battle, sure. Made mistakes, yes. Unsure about whether one man should be making these consequential decisions. All those things, yes, thank God. It was like the self-limiting humility that we needed in that first leader because it set an example, right? So John Adams, and then his son a few clicks later. There, I like to point to the Adams because when you think about our early presidents, and early, I just mean you know Lincoln before, Lincoln after, sort of thing. John Adams and John Quincy Adams, what united them? Genetics, right? They were not only were they not slave owners, but they were eloquent abolitionists. And that, excuse me, there might be a little bit of that. Excuse me. That what that was, John Adams, the second president. That was important. It took them a long time. Excuse me, just it might be a little extra water today just because of what a wonderful weekend it was. Yeah. So uh, if you look at the first, get my math right, the first 16 presidents, 13 were slave owners. Now, if you want to fight me about Millard Fillmore, were there things that were the slaves actually owned by his family? No. I mean, that may be the case, but he worked so hard to enforce the Fugitive Slave Act during his time that he doesn't get a pass. He fucked that up. So he's in that he's in the bad bucket. So of course, people will say, some may say reasonably, they were only men of their times. And if so many men shared the same sins in that period of time, then do you have to give them not grace, but do you have to understand the fallibilities of men in that time when slavery was an accepted, excuse me, part of daily life in so many places in our new country? I don't, for me, I say no. I say no because there were men, thank God, like John Adams and his son, John Quincy Adams, who took a moral position. And that connects right now. I mean, through the lineage of what President's Day is about, the law's on your side, DJT. The Supreme Court is on your side. The whatever word you want to use, the supine uh, 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 Congress. I would say, you know, what did I say yesterday? I was using prostrate, right? Laying naked on the floor face down for Donald Trump. Now maybe that's indelicate. Is it a little bit cruel to sexualize or brutalize men in Congress behaving disgracefully? Maybe. Maybe that's a little bit mean, but they make me feel a little bit mean. Well, I guess what really made me feel more angry at the human condition most recently was your homegirl Pamela Joe Bondi refusing to turn around and look at the victims that were in the chamber with her, and that lack of humanity. Forget about humility. She hasn't got humility. She doesn't understand what it means. But the lack of humanity that made me very angry. But these are the people that look at the man that chose. You know, um, Kristi Noem, Corey Lewandowski, have at it. Hope you're having fun. But the fact that other people are scanning him in so he can keep his, it's ridiculous. And of course, I was this before I decided to talk about President's Day today. I was going to talk about perhaps my favorite subject overall, is Vladimir Putin, because there is so much more. I mean, there are lots of stories, but there's some there, as my mom liked to say. There is some substance to it, and the layers upon layers of involvement that Russian state security, FSB and otherwise, were involved. Epstein, and then each of the countries individually, the programs they put together, the more the extraordinary amount of material we're learning about the Manafort team working with Trump ahead of Trump 1.0. It's mind blowing. It's delightful. I understand it's dangerous for democracy to have, oh, I don't know, a foreign power influencing the United States government, that's dangerous. But until it's proven in court, I'll give the big allegedly, right? But I know differently, and maybe you do too. But I'm going to just keep presenting the evidence as it comes forward, and you can form your own conclusion. And perhaps you've read things that I haven't on the subject. My voice is just not. I'm going to break for 1 second. Excuse me. So, yeah, I will. I'll leave my dreams of a walking tour in through St. Petersburg to one side, the Winter Palace, and all of the glory that is Vladimir Putin, and we'll do some of that later this week. But back to so if my math is right again, and if, 13 of the first 16 presidents were slave owners, and then two following Lincoln were both Grant and Jackson had owned slaves prior to their government service and didn't follow it or during. So, what are we, 16, 15, 14, 16 of our presidents, right? I'm not cutting any slack. I can acknowledge the fact that they owned slaves at a time when other people did, but then I get into mommy, I did it because Teddy did too. And we have examples of human beings similarly situated that went the other way and said no. So no, nobody gets a pass. Yeah. So, and again, in the other presidents, we had celebrations, and some of these were more state or local specific. For other great presidents, we were uh, before it was 1971, 71, when this consolidated President's Day came into being. But they were George Washington, as great as he was. They were celebrating his birthday on the battlefield when, while he was still alive, and then did it consistently from 1790, for a little bit, right? So they liked them some George. He was worthy of celebrating. And yeah, of course, Lincoln, sure. Reasons to celebrate Abe. Uh, Dwight David Eisenhower, Ike. There was Ike Day, and was it a national holiday, or was it a Republican Party promo disguised as a national? However you want, a superhero, Dwight David Eisenhower, who was a military genius. Yes, let's say that he was real good at his job. And that little pesky World War II thing, he had a hand in the strategy for D-Day and other such adventures that you could argue, saved the world, and and we appreciate him for it on President's Day. And there was FDR was celebrated, you know, but not. It wasn't, Jefferson. Maybe, you think about how do who are the guys that are on the currency, right? They seem to be pretty popular, and there were celebrations, but it was always George, and then Abe, and then everybody else. And then they consolidated in 1971 into President's Day. The whole move it to a Monday, long weekends, and everybody's happy. And we've had presidents in between 71 and now. Nixon, who wouldn't probably make it onto the currency. Jimmy Carter should be, for all the work. If he had never been president, he should be on $100 bill for all of the homes that he built for Habitat for Humanity after he was done with his presidential duties. And he's a war hero. Ronnie, sure. Bush the Elder, director of CIA, another war hero. Right? Bill, uh, you know, what can you say about Bill? Bill is still Bill Clinton is still kicking it. Hillary is. I just Hillary is should be taking victory laps, as I joke about frequently. That she should just have a big T-shirt on that says Hillary was right, because as the information that comes out about her comment about Tulsi being a Russian asset, you know, lots of things that were known. She's Secretary of State. She had access to top secret material. She knows stuff. Smart woman. She didn't quite make it. She beat beat Donald Trump in the popular vote, but it didn't get her the electoral vote. Such is life. It ain't always fair. So then we had George the Younger, George W., who was a man formed and judged greatly by the circumstances and 9/11 and what came later in Iraq. And then we have our beloved uh, Barack Obama. Of course, he's the gift that keeps on giving. There is no secret to anybody that is watching this pod or that is follows my feed, that I am a huge fan of Barack Obama. And as I said yesterday and or wrote yesterday, the most important president of my lifetime. And there were some other good ones along the way, um, and so many things that happened uh, in my younger years. And as I mentioned, that having been, I was living in Memphis, Tennessee in '68 when MLK was killed. I wasn't at the Lorraine Hotel. I wasn't at the Lorraine. But uh, JFK, MLK, RFK, Watergate, so that was quite a stretch for this country. And we came through it. Not quickly, but we came through it. And so when you're despairing over these times that give you reason for despair, remember that when George was president, some tough shit going on, and we came through it. Abe, challenging times in between a couple world wars. You know, we've as the kids say, we've been through some shit, and we'll be going through more again in the future. Maybe, hopefully, when I've gone on either up or down to greener or darker pastures. We will get through this. We just need to focus on the lessons, the humility that George taught us, and that will help us stay grounded in and remind us, collective action and otherwise, the things we need to do to get through the election in November, where there will be a lot of interference in the TikTok, X, the general DJT world, and all sorts of other things. There will be dissension, upset, distraction, noise, repetition, right? And that will all be there on purpose to distract us from what the mission is, which is getting the votes counted on the first Tuesday in November, right? So we'll stay focused on that, and we will pay tribute to all presidents, good and not so good, by exercising our citizenship and demonstrating our love of democracy and our actual love of the country. Donald Trump, whatever he does, it can't make me love the United States less. It can make me disdain the leader, Israel. However you feel, and this is a big however, Israel-Palestinian conflict, Hamas, not diminishing that, but when people say, the Zionists that say, well, you got to take it. You can't say you hate Bibi because Bibi's Israel. You can't say that I can say that I love Israelis, the people, and hate their leader. Not hate, disdain their leader. Here, where I have the standing to say so, the same. Right? But that doesn't diminish your dedication to democracy and your love for the country, because this is our thing. You know, this is this is our game, and even though it seems like he's been here forever, Trump will fade, and he's fading a little bit now, but he still has a way to go, and he still wields tremendous power, and is able to, and he's wielding power for ill, not for good, and harming people on a daily basis, hurting people, and in real physical, you know, there's nothing more physical than 10 bullets, I would argue, but also on in healthcare and people going hungry, not just in faraway places, but here in the United States. Right, hunger is a thing that many Americans deal with, while Donald J. Trump takes money and puts it away for his kids in your name. Right, as the American president, he sells influence to the White House, pockets the profits, gives them to the kids so their grandkids will never have a worry, and Americans go hungry. That's not presidential. That's corruption. That's lying. That's stealing. That's that is everything that this country has always been in opposition to. It's reprehensible behavior. Hmm. So, in any case, we appreciate your time, and we'll be back sometime tomorrow with maybe we'll be in Russia, or unless something else happens in between. And it always could. It's always a fast moving news story, and we're not jumping on the shiny object, unless it's cute. But we'll we'll move on, and wish you a beautiful afternoon, and thank you for your time.